Let me ask you something. Have you ever heard these words on screen or in your own life? I did this because I love you. I couldn't help it. I just couldn't stop myself. This is fate. We were meant to be together. These words sound romantic, but sometimes these words are just a wrapper around one thing. I want this, and I don't want to be responsible for it. 3,000 years ago, there was a woman everyone said the entire Trojan War was because of, but no one ever asked her. No one asked what she herself was thinking. You already know the story of the golden apple. Paris judged the apple to Venus, goddess of love and beauty, and Paris received a promise, the most beautiful woman in the world. Her name was Helen. Helen's origin is a myth unto itself. Her father was said to be Zeus, who transformed into a swan and seduced the Spartan queen Leda. Helen was born from a swan's egg, one of a pair of twins. This detail, I think, was told with a kind of honesty, because from the very beginning, Helen was never quite an ordinary person. Helen was a symbol, a living embodiment of what most beautiful means. When Helen came of age, heroes and princes from across Greece came to court her. Because there were so many suitors, her stepfather Tyndareus devised a plan. He made every suitor swear an oath. No matter who Helen chose, all the others would support that man and protect that marriage. A room full of hot-blooded young men, swearing oaths in the presence of beauty, that vow later became the legal foundation of the Trojan War. Helen herself placed the crown on the head of Menelaus, king of Sparta. Sometime later, a Trojan prince named Paris arrived. He came as a guest, stayed in the palace of Sparta. King Menelaus received him with honor. Then the king left on business. A window opened, and Paris took Helen with him. Whether he took her or took her by force, Homer never made it entirely clear. The answer depends on whose eyes you're looking through: Venus, the king, Paris, Helen, or your own. There are many versions of Helen's story from 3,000 years ago, but the most haunting is the scene Homer wrote. She stands alone on the walls of Troy, looking out at the war that crossed the sea to find her. In the language of home, a language that belongs to a place she can no longer reach, she points out, one by one, the Greek heroes below. Strangers to the city around her, familiar faces in the army below. The battle before her is real. The longing for home is real. She watches her own people dying for her, and she lowers her head and says she is ashamed, ashamed of her own existence, because she is in Troy. I want to stay here for a moment. In 3,000 years of retelling this story, everyone discusses Paris's choice, Menelaus's rage, Agamemnon's ambition, Achilles' glory. No one seriously asks, Helen, what was she thinking? Did she have a choice? In that era, her stepfather chose her husband, but he couldn't afford to offend the other suitors. So what did he do? He let Helen's own hand place the crown on Menelaus's head, so it would look like she chose him herself. Not long after she married the king, a foreign prince arrived while her husband was away and took her with him. Did she refuse? Or rather, was she even allowed to refuse? We don't know. Homer didn't say. Whether that silence was intentional or not, Homer left the question open, because this question 3,000 years later still has no clear answer. When a woman stands between one powerful man, an even more powerful man, and a promise made by a goddess, how much of her yes, like Wang Zhaojun sent to the northern frontier, like Diao Chan given as a political gift, is truly free? Is this defending Helen? No, it's saying something else entirely. We blamed an entire war on a woman, and we never once asked whether she had a voice in that story at all. And yet, there's another question. Why did Paris take Helen? He said it was love, it was fate, it was Zeus, it was Venus's arrangement. Pay close attention here. He took "I want this" and wrapped it in "this is destiny." And with that packaging, his responsibility disappeared. This wasn't my choice. The gods made me do this. It was written in fate. And besides, she wanted to come. There is a concept in psychology called rationalization. Simply put, people don't make decisions because they have reasons. They make decisions first. Then they find the reasons. Once the decision is made, the brain automatically supplies a logical explanation. Like so much of human history, the narrative is written after the destination is chosen. First shoot the arrow, then draw the target. Paris wanted Helen, and then he told himself, "This is what Venus promised me. This is fate. This is love." This psychology doesn't belong only to Paris. Have you ever done something and then found yourself a reason, one that made it sound more acceptable? This isn't greed. It's an investment. This isn't running away. I just need space. This isn't control. I'm protecting you. This isn't possession. This is love. Language is the most powerful rationalization tool human beings have. Paris used the word fate to turn an act of taking into something that sounded like a love story blessed by gods and men alike. In the entire story of the Trojan War, Helen is the most silent protagonist. 1,000 ships came for her. 10 years of war began because of her. Troy was destroyed in her name. And yet, the words she speaks, Homer wrote so few of them, so few. The image we have of her most often is standing on the city walls, watching the people on both sides die for her. But that silence, standing on the walls, listening to the wind, listening to the sounds of battle, gazing out at a battlefield she never asked for, that silence itself is an answer. When a person in someone else's story is not a character, but only a cause, that person was never truly seen from the beginning. Have you ever known someone like that? Or have you ever been in a relationship where you felt like you were a reason, not a person? When someone says they love you, what do they love? The things you can give them, or you, the actual person? What Paris loved was the most beautiful woman in the world, an idea. But how much did Paris actually know about Helen, the person? So Helen's story is not a love story. It is about a woman who was not treated as a real person, but as an answer to someone else's question, and a man who called, "I want this," destiny, and let the entire world pay the price for his choice. 3,000 years later, both of these things are still happening. Not always as war, not always as abduction, but that pattern, wrapping desire in the language of love, calling possession fate, it can silence one person or an entire group of people inside someone else's story. That structure hasn't gone away. Fortunately, in the Iliad, Homer let Helen speak one line. She said, "I wish that I had died before I came here with Paris." That is one of the few things Helen says out loud. And then, that's it. Homer moves on to someone else's story. Let me ask you, in your story, is there a person you have never truly asked, what do you actually want? Because the world is not always the way you think it is. Wu Talks World. See you next time.